You are listening to Aeri Awakening by Kai Stormhaven. Chapter 14. Ariana stood staring at Lorenessa in shock at her declaration that she had to leave her home. She had always wanted to travel to some of the strange places her father had told her existed outside of the small village she grew up in, but it was always a distant time in the future that she would leave. What about my parents? Ariana demanded, feeling more agitated the more she thought about it. What about my inventions? My things? Lorenessa studied her silently for a moment before replying. We can make a short stop at your home so that your parents know what is happening, but you'll still need to leave if you want to live. Ariana sighed in frustration. There really weren't any options that she could see, and she had spent her life finding options that others claimed didn't exist. If she stayed, more of the creatures that had attacked them might appear in her village. Personally, she didn't really care if the rest of the village was wiped out, but she didn't want to endanger her parents. She couldn't risk leaving on her own. She might end up dead, as much from ignorance of the outside world as being hunted down by the king's soldiers. Squaring her shoulders, she faced Lorenessa. Very well, I will accompany you. We'll need to let my parents know that I'm leaving, though, or they'll come searching for me. Lorenessa nodded, placing a sympathetic hand on Ariana's shoulder. I'm truly sorry for bringing this trouble to your home, Ariana. Lorenessa apologized regretfully. We'll do our best to help get you set up with a new place to call home. Ariana blinked, staring into Lorenessa's eyes with a kind of wonder. You really aren't at all what I expected, Ariana admitted quietly. Thank you for caring. Lorenessa smiled warmly and gave Ariana a quick hug. We'll get you all fixed up and living like a queen. Ariana stiffened when Lorenessa hugged her. She wasn't a physical person at all, certainly not hugs. As the assassin released her, she suddenly wondered if she might just be missing out on something important in life. The woman who had followed Lorenessa had been studying Ariana silently during the exchange, as if she were a strange puzzle. She was not sure what to make of her. She was dressed like a noble, though she lacked the overbearing confidence that most nobles adopted. How does she fit into the picture? She wondered, studying the woman with the same puzzled fascination with which the woman was studying her. Giving her head a small shake, she turned and started back toward the village with the other two following behind her. She thought about asking who Lorenessa's companion was, but she thought Lorenessa would have already told her if she had wanted her to know. As they made their way back to the village, Ariana tried to change the leaden feeling that was beginning to settle into the pit of her stomach. She told herself that this was her chance to meet other people that might be like her. This was her chance to leave behind the provincial villagers that tried to make her life miserable merely for being different. A half an hour later, they passed through a gate in a small white fence that surrounded a 2-story house on the outskirts of town. It was obviously the largest home in the village, easily covering a 1/4 acre of land. When Ariana had first found several bars of gravitonium on the bottom of Lake Gravitas, her father had been able to sell them to a person that he knew in Annapolis that did not ask unnecessary questions regarding origin or ownership. They had only received 1/100th of their original value in payment, but that had been more than enough to have the house rebuilt, with plenty left over to live off for the rest of their lives. They told the local villagers that it had been an inheritance from a distant family member in Annapolis, and since her grandfather had not been from Lakeport, no one could dispute the claim. Her father had dedicated the entire upper floors to her, telling her that she should have a place to conduct her experiments. Her father was waiting for them on the front porch, his face full of concern. He was a tall man, taller than any other man that Ariana had ever seen. His hair was almost completely gray, and his face was etched with lines that were at odds with the youthful light in his blue eyes. He wore a light brown robe with a symbol sewn over the right breast that seemed to be made up of a series of complexly arrayed triangles. "You're all right," he said, sounding relieved. "We heard some kind of commotion coming from the lake," he finished with a questioning note in his strong voice. His gaze passed over her new companions, widening in recognition when they landed on Jessica. "Your Highness," her father said with a deep bow, "my house is honored." The concern on his face had tightened into worry as he looked back at his daughter. "Your Highness?" Ariana exclaimed in surprise. "What are you talking about, Dad?" His eyes flickered quickly between the two newcomers before looking back at his daughter cautiously. "This is Princess Jessica," he said slowly to his daughter, looking surprised by her ignorance of who her companions were. Turning to stare in amazement at her unassuming companion, she could not help feeling skeptical as Jessica shrugged nonchalantly at her father's esteemed address. "It was sort of an accident that I had no control over. My position embarrassed my father, almost as much as his embarrassed me." Laurinessa laughed softly at this, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Jessica. "So that's the way the wind blows," Ariana thought with wry amusement, and a more interesting pair I could not imagine. Aloud she said, "This is my father, Davian." Feeling the lead ball in her stomach grow in size, she continued, "Dad, can you have Mom come down? We need to discuss a few things." Sighing, Davian nodded, beckoning the others into the house after him. The sitting room looked like it belonged to a blacksmith-turned-artist. 2 small metal pipes ran up the wall next to the door, where they met a larger pipe that ran along the ceiling. Walking up to one of the metal tubes, her father pulled a thin wire that ran alongside the tubing. A moment later, a voice issued out of one of the tubes. "Do you know what time it is, Ariana?" A woman's drowsy voice asked tiredly. "It's me, love," Davian spoke into the second tube. "Can you come down here, please?" There was a moment of silence before she replied, "Let me get dressed." Jessica walked up to the set of tubes, staring at them in fascination. "Amazing!" Her eyes shone with excitement. "How far away can you talk through these tubes?" "Almost a mile," Ariana replied modestly. She felt a thrill of satisfaction mixed with pride that someone besides her parents showed some interest in one of her inventions. All the villagers regarded her devices with scorn, if not outright hostility. As Jessica studied the tubes where they connected with the main tube on the ceiling, Ariana's mother arrived, descending in the lift box that Ariana had designed just last year. As the lift box lowered from the second floor to land softly in the entryway, Jessica's attention was diverted from the listening tubes to the lift box. "How does this work?" Jessica asked, hurrying over to study the lift box, almost running Ariana's mother over in the process. She stood peering up at the roof of the lift box, the top of which was now flush with the ceiling, then walking around inside of it in fascination as she inspected every part of it. She looked up in surprise as Laurinessa cleared her throat loudly. "I don't mean to ruin your fun, Jessica," Laurinessa said, that small smile once again lighting her face, "but we do have a rather urgent matter to take care of." Jessica laughed sheepishly. "I'm sorry," she said to Ariana's mother. "My manners have left me. I'm Jessica, and this is Laurinessa." Her mother's eyes widened at Jessica's name. When she mentioned Laurinessa's, she shrank back in sudden fear. Davian moved swiftly forward to place himself between his wife and Laurinessa, while Ariana assured them that everything was fine. Jessica stood gaping, staring at them as if they had gone mad, while Laurinessa arched a very cool eyebrow at her. "We just had a chance meeting," Ariana explained, describing the bizarre encounter. Her parents went from looking intrigued by the coincidental meeting to alarm as she described the elemental's attack. "Evictors, you say?" her father asked when she finished explaining the king's unusual behavior. "That's what Laurinessa called them," Ariana replied, inclining her head at Laurinessa. "Why would the evictors be hunting you?" Ariana's mother asked Jessica curiously. Laurinessa cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, what was your name?" she asked Ariana's mother. "Claire," she replied, flushing slightly. "I didn't mean to overreact earlier, but you surprised me." "Think nothing of it, Claire." Laurinessa gestured at Jessica. "We are not certain why the evictors are hunting Jessica, and Jessica was not even aware of what an evictor was until a few days ago." Pausing, Laurinessa studied Ariana's parents before asking, "How is it that you know what evictors are?" The two of them shared a guarded look before answering. "My father knew of them," Davian answered, studying her in return. "He knew a lot of stories about the old civilization and the war that ended it." "What was his name?" Lorenessa asked intently. The couple shared another guarded look before Davian sighed resignedly. I am going to assume that his name will be safe with you, since the evictors are trying to kill you. He was known as Redgart, and he was one of the last members of the Delphite Order. Enough people remember the Delphite Order as being responsible for the end of the old civilization that it isn't a good idea to be associated with them. Lorenessa nodded in satisfaction. I thought you looked familiar. Ariana noticed a sudden spark of suppressed emotion in Lorenessa's eyes. Could it be hope? Have you ever met a woman by the name of Raya? Lorenessa asked too casually. She may have been in the company of a man that was garbed in black. Davian sighed sadly. I knew a woman by that name, he admitted heavily. If she was a friend, then I'm sorry to inform you that she died some years ago. Ariana had been watching Lorenessa, so she saw the wave of anguish that clouded her face for a moment. Tears welled in her eyes before she hastily pulled them back, resuming her mask of calm. I see, was all she said. The man that you are referring to, her father began reflectively, was his name Lochnar? Lochnar? Lorenessa repeated, looking as if she were tasting the word. I never did learn his name. The man of whom I spoke was Raya's father. Davian nodded. Yes, that was Lochnar. As far as I know, he still lives. From the look on her father's face, there was more to it than that, though he said nothing more. Dad, the soldiers that escaped saw me clearly, Ariana said in a rush. They will be back to look for me. Maybe the other creatures will too, I don't know. She watched her father anxiously, not willing to come out and say that she must leave. Her father sighed again. I know. Looking at Jessica and Lorenessa, he continued. There is more at work here than meets the eye, I think. We could pretend that it was chance that you went to the lake on the same night that these two decided to make camp there. We could also pretend that it was chance that what you found on the bottom of the lake was the very weapon that you needed to defeat the elemental and the evictors. We could even stretch it so far by saying the fact that both Lorenessa and I have ties to members of the Delphite Order was just an odd coincidence. Pausing, he surveyed the three of them to make sure that they understood. We could pretend a lot of things, but I think there is another force at work here, something that is guiding your every footstep. Lorenessa looked like this was not the first time the thought had occurred to her. She also looked like she did not like the implications involved, though Ariana had no idea what they might be. Jessica's eyes were narrowed in thought as her father's observations sunk in. I think it is time that we moved on, Davian continued determinedly. This has been an excellent home for the time that we have been here, but its purpose has been served. He was watching Ariana, his eyes full of pride. You have grown into a mantle of greatness that you do not yet realize, though one day you will. Ariana stared at her father uncertainly. Are you saying that you are coming with us? Ariana was not certain that her parents would be up to the long journey ahead of them. Shaking his head, her father sighed. We'll go to Annapolis, he announced, glancing at his wife with an upraised eyebrow. If the evictors are returning, then we'll need to be in a place where we can be of the most help. Annapolis is one of the best strategic locations for the enemy to have. We'll need to influence the succession now that the king is dead and make certain that his replacement is not an evictor as well. Staring at her father as if she had never seen him before, Ariana could only shake her head slowly in wonder. Who is my father? He was certainly much more than I realized. How did he know anything about the inner workings of court? And how was he going to influence the next succession? Turning to look at her mother, she noticed for the first time the regal bearing with which she carried herself. Claire did not have the casual, almost clumsy gait of the other village wives, but carried herself with a grace that made her seem a swan among ducks. Claire's expression was a mixture of sadness and excited anticipation. Lorenessa cleared her throat again, this time a little more urgently. I don't mean to rush you, but we need to move on if we want to make any distance before morning. Where are we going? Ariana asked curiously. Lorenessa glanced at Jessica with a troubled expression on her face. South, for now. I have a kind of ship that we can use, Ariana offered. That way we won't have to worry about running into soldiers. A ship? Lorenessa said in surprise. That would be wonderful. Walking up to her parents swiftly, Ariana embraced them fiercely. I love you, she whispered softly into their ears. We love you too, Ariana, her father replied tenderly, tears in his eyes. Please take care of our daughter, her mother implored Laurinessa with tears in her eyes as she quickly embraced her daughter. I will, Laurinessa assured them earnestly. Turning away from her parents, Ariana led Jessica and Laurinessa out the front door and down a path behind the house. The path led to an inlet from the lake that was a few hundred feet from their property. The inlet was surrounded by thick trees that were sheltering what looked like a large, floating, two-wheeled carriage with a mast in the center of it. There were small benches on the front and back of the odd-looking barge and 3 very odd-shaped seats on the sides and middle. That's a ship? Laurinessa asked doubtfully. Sort of, Ariana replied as she walked down the small dock it was tied to. She stepped aboard. Except that this will travel faster than any ship that you can find on this lake. From the blank look on Laurinessa's face, Ariana could tell that she thought that it was a boast. Jessica was considering it with pursed lips, studying the round wells that attached to the sides. They would both see in a few moments. As her 2 companions joined her on board, she directed Laurinessa to sit in the seat next to the port side, while she slipped into the seat on the starboard side. Jessica, can you cast off? She called to her as she sat down on one of the benches. With a start, she stood back up and untied the ropes that held them to the side of the small dock. Reaching down to a lever that was sticking out of the deck next to her, she pulled hard. There was a loud clank beneath the decking, causing her 2 companions to jump slightly. She pulled another lever and the deck in front of the 2 seats opened up as a small set of foot pedals appeared where her and Laurinessa's feet were. This time, Laurinessa did jump out of her seat in surprise, but settled back sheepishly as Ariana arched an eyebrow at her. Push your feet against the pedals to make the paddle wheel move, she said to Laurinessa, pushing her feet against her own and pedaling backward to show her. We push this way to go backward, the other way to go forward. The strange ship began turning in a circle as soon as Ariana pedaled backward, but straightened slightly as Laurinessa began pedaling on the other side. As the small craft turned to face the open lake, Ariana told Laurinessa to begin pedaling the other way. Ariana pushed the lever next to her forward, which caused the ship to turn the direction that she wanted. The small vessel picked up speed as they moved out into the main body of the lake. Ariana continued pulling different levers, which increased the resistance on the pedals and in turn increased their speed. As the 2 women pumped their legs against the pedals, Jessica crawled over every inch of the boat, like a mouse that had just found a table full of food and didn't know what to inspect first. She climbed on top of the well that covered the water wheel, studying it from her precarious perch, with an intensity that made both she and Laurinessa laugh. Laurinessa suggested that she pull the steering lever the other way and see how well Jessica swam. Jessica was completely oblivious to the 2 of them. Jessica made her way down from the well and over to the front of the vessel, where a handle stuck out of the deck. As she looked inside, her eyes widened at the complicated series of gears, chains, and pulleys rotating swiftly through the underside of the deck. Be careful, Jessica, Ariana warned. You could lose a finger if it gets caught in the gears. Jessica's head bobbed up above the upraised decking with a startled expression that made the 2 women laugh again. She had obviously forgotten that anyone else was on board. Can she help in that seat? Laurinessa asked, gesturing at the seat that was between them. Ariana shook her head. That's the seat I use when there's no one else to help. She pointed at the lever that she had switched when they first boarded. It's set to either connect the middle seat to the gears or the 2 side seats, but not all 3. Laurinessa nodded her understanding. Where did you learn how to make all of this? She asked with interest. I actually can't take all of the credit for this invention. Ariana replied with a distant look on her face. My father had a friend that had stayed with us for a couple of days once. Ariana remembered how interested the man had been in all her inventions, telling her how brilliant she was. She had only been 19 at the time and had flushed with pleasure at the compliment. I had been working on a vessel that was much simpler than this at the time, with much heavier materials. When he saw it, he showed me a small drawing of how gears and chains worked, and that I could use my feet to propel it instead of my arms, leaving them free to steer. He also recommended special, lightweight materials to use for the structure. Laurinessa's eyes had sharpened when she mentioned the man that had stayed with her father. "Do you know who the man was?" Her tone made Ariana's ears perk up warily. "He said that his name was Caliph," Ariana replied, looking at her curiously. "Why? Do you know him?" Laurinessa's eyes had gone flat when she mentioned the man's name. "I know him," she said without elaborating further. A burning rage beneath her tone warned Ariana to leave the subject alone. Sighing, she wondered how many other people and events tied the three of them together.